I've got the GM110 back in the shop for a little bit of work. Just some daft little bits and pieces really, nothing serious. But one of the things that was really annoying was because I used a GM clutch and I wanted to join it to a Land Rover hydraulic system, made it somewhat complicated. Why? Well, fittings for a start. What was happening with the car, it was losing fluid. I think we tested this once before. I think I did actually. I put some air pressure down inside the master cylinder to see where it was leaking. However, it never leaked. You could leave it on for 3 hours and never leaked. But after a month, the fluid would go down after driving it. Odd. So I kept telling him when we get a free time we'll bring it in and we'll have a look at it. Today's the day. So let's just have a look at what a GM fitting is. It's one of these bad boys. Can you see that? I'll put my hand in and you might be able to focus in on it a bit better. It's a really funky little valve, and this is on the end of the flex hole, the hose that comes from your master cylinder. No big deal, eh? The idea about it is you can buy a master cylinder from you know, your aftermarket parts supplier with this on, and it's already got fluid in it. Think about that. Inside here there's a little valve, so when you push this inside the pipe that goes to your release bearing and slave cylinder, because it's one of those things that's integral with each other, if you see what I mean. So it's a clutch bearing and a slave cylinder, and there's two little pipes come out the side. One's for bleeding and one's for attaching this to. And this was the problem. I couldn't find out where it was leaking from. So I put some dye in the brake fluid and I let him drive it around for a while. And when we had a bit of a free moment, I said, well, let's have a look at it. And I had a look at it, and round here was wet. You know, you could see it fluorescing when you put the ultraviolet light on. So the problem was it the O-ring or was it the fitting? These are a push. Now the original pipe was like a braided stainless steel covering with a PVC pipe on the inside, and this is just a plastic pipe. This is a replacement, and this is what's caused us a lot of headache. But not only has this caused us a lot of headache, to get this out you're supposed to use a little fork to push this little furrow back. It releases the clip and then you can pull this out. Easy peasy. So the idea is when you plug this into your cylinder, which is already bled through with fluid, you clip this in, you don't need to bleed it through. How clever is that? But a nightmare when you want to work on it. Because when you had the bell housing on the truck, if this was the bell housing, the fitting was inside. What a pain in the bottom it was to get out. You're supposed to use a little fork, like a little metal fork, and tease it out. Well, that wasn't good enough for us. So I went to JP last night and he knocked me up this little thing here. It's a little tube that we can slip over the pipe like this and then simply push that furrow back like that. Easy peasy. And it worked first time and it was a treat. You couldn't do it because it's a split furrow like this. It's split. If you tried to get it out with a screwdriver, and if you don't press it parallel, the bloody thing would twist. Pain in the bottom. Now, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about something else at the moment. So I managed to find a way to put a Land Rover fitting on the end of this plastic pipe. Now I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. Why? Well, this is a nylon pipe, and this just, I hammered this on. I put a nut on the end and warmed it up and hammered it on, you know, crimped round it, and it's gone quite well. And JP, I went to see him this morning because I said, I'd really like to test how much pressure's in these pipes. Good idea. So, how much pressure is in a pipe? How much pressure does a master cylinder generate? Good question, isn't it? Let's find out. As you can see, I've been playing around with lots of adapters trying to make this work, and man, oh man, I had to go down JP and he turned down me a special fitting again. But what we've got here, we've got a master cylinder assembly in the vise. It's all bled through, so don't worry about that. It's a bit of a shonky angle, but you'll see why in a minute. I've got a big pry bar in here with a spanner acting like a pivot pushing on the pedal. Got that in it. Now, if I was to press down on here, because it's locked up, because there's nowhere for the fluid to go, I can exert a lot of pressure on here and have a look at the gauge. So I don't know how I'm going to actually do this, and I can't work out for the life of me how much pressure should be on the pedal, because there's nowhere for the liquid to go, there's nowhere for the fluid to move. So we're going to get a big reading. So let's move the camera and I'll show you. So this is the setup. He's lent me a gauge that goes up to 3000 psi. Now if I just put the if I just was to put this bar on its own, we'll get a reading. So what I've done is, you know, because it's like being like Magnus Pike here, I'm going to do some science. This bar weighs, wait a minute, I'm going to set my scale to 0 because we want it accurate. That is 3.5 kilos. So remember that, that's 3.5 kilos. So let's put this on here. So we're going to take advantage of the housing, put a screwdriver, a spanner under here, on the pedal. So let's take now some measurements. Where I've put my tape measure here. The pivot here, now this is where it gets really confusing, because where's the pivot? The pivot here to the edge of the pad is 28 centimetres, and from here to the end is 66 centimetres. Does that make a difference? I don't know, but this is almost in the same line, if you see what I mean, almost. But with that bar on there at the moment, with no weight on it, how much did I say? Was it 3.5 kilos? It is coming out at 50 pounds, 50 psi. Now, I can't tell you what it is in bar, but you'll have to work it out. Now, 50 pounds. You can see I've got the scales here, and because we press the pedal with our foot rather than our arm, we can get a better reading. We can put more force on with our feet than our hands when I get it spluttered out. But I seem to remember before we tested a brake pedal using some scales. Just press on the brake, on the clutch pedal should I say, not the brake, and see what it's reading. So fortunately, outside here, I've got the 300 TDI from Florida. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run outside and put a block of wood on here and push down on here and see how many pounds or kilos it takes to push the clutch down. We've done it before and it was kind of an interesting experiment. Let's see how it goes again. So, by pushing the scales on the pedal, I used my brush, scientific brush. It took 25 kilos to push down the clutch, because obviously the clutch is going to move. If we were just doing it static, we can get all sorts of readings. Well, shall we see what readings we can get? So let's go skip forward a bit while I'm set up here. So you can see the gauge there. I'm going to now press down on this pedal using the long bar, and you can see, I mean, everything's bloody moving. We can get 1200 psi, which is kind of sufficient. But what can we get on a regular type of use, just with the scales of justice? So we're looking for 25 pounds, 25 kilos. So what do we get with 25 kilos? We get, well, I can't bloody see, wait a minute. So press that down, 25 kilos, 500 psi. I know it's all measurements mixed up, but you can work it out yourself, because I can't read the scale on the bar pressure. So 25 Well, that's not much, is it? Considering this will go to 1200 psi, so we're midway in its range. How much pressure do we need to get up to 1200 pounds? Well, let's try it. I can't force it. I can get 50 kilos. 50 kilos is the most I can push. Let me see if I can get some more. No, I can't do more than 50 kilos. I should eat some more pies. So, what's the point of this experiment? Well, I want to see if this pipe's going to burst. This pipe. But I haven't got a T-piece on it. Until now. So I'm going to see if I can rig up. Where did I put it now? I'm going to see if we can rig up this TD5 switch to go in place of the gauge, so I can put the gauge in the top and the pipe out here and press and see what it actually works at without bursting the joint on here, because I'm just a bit curious how much pressure this is going to hold and I don't want to blow it off, if you see what I mean. So let me get set up. Back again. So I just went back to check the 300 TDI clutch and it was actually 25 Newton meters, 25 kilos to press the pedal down, because it's got one of them pedals that sort of goes over centre, so I was a bit confused by that. However, so what I've got now is I've got the TD5 type T-piece in here, adapter, 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 and then we go to a gauge. From here we've got a pipe that goes here, I made, and this now goes to our flexible pipe, which I've bled through again. So now the pedal is on 0. I want you to see this while I do it. So I'm going to apply 25 kilos to here. There's 25 kilos. That's just shy of 500 pounds. Isn't that incredible? You wouldn't have thought it would, you know, amplify that much, would you? And the joint here hasn't broken. So we established with the big bar on, the most I could press down on this was 50. Oh, it's moving, you see. Wait a minute. See if I can get a better clinch on it than that. I don't really care about this cylinder, that's why. So the most I could push on that was 50. Oh, shit. I just want to keep moving. Let's get it right down here. Right. See, I don't know my own strength sometimes. That's 50. What is it on the gauge? Wait a minute. I can't look at both at the same time. Well, I can't get it over 1,000. It's around about 45, 50. So let's take it one step further. Let's use the power of levers. Leverage. Right, so now what we had before was 1,200 pounds on the gauge, which you can't see. There. Easy. And what's happening? This is leaking. So that's good. So we can't go, so this joint, or this is what the whole point of this exercise was, this joint will hold over 1,000 pounds where we only need 500. Safety factor of 2. Hope you like that. It's a bit of fun, wasn't it? Would you have believed it? This puts out 500. No wonder the bloody things leak. Now, talking of leaks, JP and I were last night were chatting about things I should tell you. I haven't got one here because he's got it on his bench. The installation tool for the brake seals, you know, the brake caliper retainer rings, won't be available till the end of November, unfortunately. Why? Because, as you know, we're trying to do cost cutting and machine cutting, you know, cutting costs. We actually had to order a special piece of steel in, which wasn't all that expensive, but it's not a standard stock size. But the size of it means that we don't have to machine the outside, and we have to just machine just a little bit off the insides where the pistons go and the end. So it's going to make life really, really easy to make them. I think JP said he's going to make them all. He's going to make 40 of them. But once he's set up, he can knock them out like wildfire. The reason for that was we didn't know how many we were going to make and how popular it would be. But the thing was, what we noticed was on our original setup, with the hammering, there's a little lip on the inside, that's the important part. And after using it for a long time, well, I don't know, 10 years, it started to put a shoulder on. So we're going to make it just that bit wider, so it was important to do it right, do it once, and that's it. So that's one thing we've come across. But let me wash my hands, get this brake fluid off, and I'll come back and tell you the other one. So what's the other one I'm going to tell you? Well, JP has got a load, and I mean a load of these master cylinders I've been keeping, and also the slaves, especially for 300 TDIs and 200 TDIs. And we were discussing about the seals, qualities and things like this, and the master cylinders and the weaknesses. Now it appears, which we might do an experiment with later, when the piston hits this, when the shaft hits this piston, there's no lubrication on the piston, and it's in aluminium. So what happens basically is this is acting like a piston guide, but what can happen, because it's a little bit loose in the cylinder, it can actually tip and go like this, just ever so slightly. That's a real exaggeration, and that's what wears the cylinders out. They're all worn out. So we had to think about it, and JP said, oh, we could put a wear ring on this. I said, what's a wear ring? And he says, we can put this in the lathe, turn a gap, turn a slot down, rather like that, and he can turn some special plastic, and it's a really special plastic, because it will, this is 3/4 of an inch diameter, 19 mil or something like that. So it can make it the exact snug fit inside the diameter. So this piston, in effect, will be fixed in the centre of the bore. Excellent. So what happens is the seals here will act in as the pressure. So instead of pivoting, it will now remain parallel to the bore. Now it's gonna, this special plastic's like a self-lubricating plastic. So we won't have to worry about it wearing out, because what happens is, because these tip and wear the bores out, the seal's wearing backwards and forwards, it wears the bloody seals out. That's the thing that goes wrong with them. So I think we can fix that. So we're going to work on some prototypes, but it could be quite interesting, because we've got some cylinders here to do, but these would be nice and easy to ship. In fact, you could even ship me the old ones back and we could get a batch of them done. I don't know, we could even get those CNC machined up, I suppose, with the rings already in them. Oh, that would be exciting, wouldn't it? The ring's going to be like a split ring, rather like this type of idea here. So it's got a collar, it's got like a collar on it, not with a shoulder or anything like that. It would just be parallel, very similar to that actually idea. So it would sit in the groove, like Madonna, she gets in the groove now and again. And then that will keep that square. And I bet your bottom dollar, these would last 1,000,000 years. And if they don't, we can bring one back. No, but that is the problem with them. We looked at it and we said, oh, that's a bad idea. Now, we could do the same with the clutch. For the simple reason, these are dead easy. Again, you've got a problem having a pivot bar in here, which is sort of at an angle when it pushes your clutch, if you see what I mean. We could actually make a wear ring to go in here, and so that's nice and parallel in the bore. It could be quite good. Now here's an interesting thing to look at. Oh, this is another type of piston. You see there, it's already got the ring in. I wonder if they had that idea. Never know, do you? Now, talking about cylinders, while we've got them here, this is uber important. On the 300 TDI there were 2 types of master cylinder and 2 types of push rod for the slave. Sorry, let's say that again. On the 300 TDI there were two types of slave cylinder. Both for the 300 TDI, but for some reason they changed the length of the rods. Now JP said something about it to stop it pivoting. I don't know. I was thinking about something else at the time. Sorry. But you can see how shallow this one is and how deep this one is. Now the problem occurs if you buy a master cylinder and you don't know which one it is. You get, if your gearbox has got the long push rod in, and then you fit this type of piston to the long push rod, as you tighten it up it will be pushing the clutch into play, and then your clutch will slip. Not now, not when it's a new clutch, but you know, like a few months down the road it'll slip, because it's meant for this cylinder. This is a lot deeper, so it's really important to know which is which. I'll do once we get all these built back up, I'll do a little video on trying to explain which is which, because it's caught an awful lot of people out because they mix and match them together. The thing is, you can't tell from the outside of the slave cylinder casting which is which. You can't tell. You can only tell by the piston, and of course they've got a dust cover over the front, so you can't see what they are anyway. You'd have to literally take the dust cover off and have a look inside. If it's a deep one, I think this is the later one. If it's a short one, it's the early one. But as you know, when you've been doing clutches and things like this and you've been mixing and matching bits and pieces around, who knows what the hell's on it, because you're supposed to go off the gearbox number. How many gearboxes has Land Rover's had over the last 20 years? Hundreds. So you don't know which is which. So anyway, I hope that was a bit of interest doing that clutch pipe. It was very mind-blowing, wasn't it? It was for me, because I thought that pipe fitting would come off. Just before we go, I'll actually show you the fitting that I used. Back again. Sorry it's a long video, but it's interesting, isn't it? Better than Coronation Street. Our neighbours. Is the neighbours still on? This is the pipe fitting that I used for this connection here onto the plastic. Now, this was the interesting bit. Come here. Oh, we're at an angle now with my bateau vision. This is what they came off. These flexible hoses. These are clutch hoses. They're a 7/16 UNF thread. So what I did was, I cut it off here. Now this is a pretty good one, but I always keep ratty old parts just in case. Cut it off here, clamp this in the drill press, and with the disc grinder, cut just under the head of the hex, and then with a bit of luck you can pull this sleeve off and you end up with that. See, there's a tube in there. Nothing fancy, no barbs or burrs or anything like that, but the one I chose had some little rings in here to clinch it even tighter. So 7/16 UNF nut, screw that onto there so you don't damage the top. We've done this with the breather pipes, but this is taking it one step further. We get one of these clamp bars, and these come with those really cheap how do you say, pipe flaring kits, which are no good for the pipe flaring, but this is actually worth its weight in gold, because you can see there's like thread cut into here. So when you clamp your pipe in here, your plastic pipe sticking through like so, warm the pipe up with a gun. Now I had 3 experiments with this. Once I warmed it up too much, and the pipe just, as soon as you hit the pipe square, you know, hit this square, it just bent. And then I did it when it was cold, and it just cracked the pipe. Then I warmed it up so it was just warm to touch, tap this in, perfect. Perfect. That's what I liked. That's my standard. So you can do it. So that means you can mix and match all sorts of stuff kicking about. But like I say, it's when you're in a shop like this, it's sacrilege to throw useful bits and pieces of fittings, because as you can see, you know, this is a box of assorted fuel pipe pressure sensors and fittings and stuff like this, but we can mix and match them up to make a wondrous type of design with adapters and stuff to make a test rig. You can do it. Alright, that's just a bit of messing about. I'll hope to get this car book back together tonight, and then we'll see you on the next exciting instalment.